We are here at the museum for a cause for celebration, their newest exhibit, and we're going to go through it and kind of check it out. So there's a lot of really cool things happening here. The idea behind the exhibit is that it's supposed to be a look at the relationship with Canada and Indigenous peoples and that sort of thing. And it became all the more important when the museum's giant Canadian flag was vandalized, so that has really kind of made this an interesting exhibit to look at. So it's really cool how the museum was right on top of it right from the get-go. So they have, in this kind of area here, they have a number of different pieces of artwork. Some of them, as you can see, are really, really cool. That's really outstanding. I love that. But I wanted to show you guys this here, which I can't even really understand what it's trying to say here. But it's got some really cool visuals here, and yeah, just really, even if it didn't say anything, I think it really visually sum up Canada's relationship with Indigenous people, if I can talk. And just look at that. That's just so cool. So there's one big thing I definitely wanted to show you guys here. So this is the actual banner that was hung on the museum when the Canadian flag was vandalized at the front of the building there. And it's kind of cool how they've actually put it into their exhibit here. As you can see, it's pretty it's pretty clear about what kind of message it's trying to say here. But it's really, I really just commend the museum for how they've handled it and for doing the dialogue and for putting this actually in their exhibit here. And then they've actually done something cool where they've taken a whole bunch of like excerpts of different let me see if I can talk here. Different news outlets and how they covered them differently. So I don't think it really says too much in my opinion, but it does kind of show how the news was covering this sort of thing and how this is covered by the media in general, which I think is interesting. And then that's what the flag looked like. You can see the banner right there. So that's what that guy was. It was actually on the museum. Somehow someone had climbed actually on top of the building and actually put that there. So and then there's also a black substance. So you can see here there's a little message saying that, and then kind of showing a couple different news outlets there. So I thought that was really interesting. And then they actually are trying to make this a two-way conversation too. So you'll see they're encouraging people to share their feelings about this and what happens. So you can actually write out your own thoughts, and they'll add that to the table here, where they've kind of taken the seasons and actually incorporate them into a really interesting kind of visual. Summer, spring, winter, autumn, and then people's responses here are actually being placed in kind of the different areas. So autumn, for example, represents emotional, and I thought that was cool. And there's some really sort of visceral sort of responses, which I think is interesting. Canada equals genocide, which is certainly kind of challenging to deal with, but I mean, I think every piece of dialogue here is really important. So it's just it's one of the coolest exhibits I think I've seen in a really long time. So what do you guys think about this? What are your thoughts on this? Would you come here and share your thoughts? Is this kind of blowing it out of proportion for you, or is this not enough? Very curious about what you guys are thinking. As I wait for those responses, I'll kind of take you through my favorite part of this here, where they actually have the prime ministers of Canada throughout their history, and then they actually have little excerpts kind of showing the relationship of that government to Indigenous peoples, which I think is important to show because there's some really, really terrible things that were said. And then one people, great in territory, great in resources, great in enterprise, great in credit, great in capital, by John A. MacDonald. Something you might not expect if you're a white Canadian like myself and haven't really been exposed to these sorts of things. And then Minister Tom Daly from one of the earlier governments here, but he basically said how they don't deserve food or the government has no obligation to help them, which is a bit mind-boggling. Let's see, what's another good one? William Mackenzie King, one of his ministers, basically said how their goal is to absorb and assimilate Indians, and that there should be no Indian department, and that's the whole point of the bill in the 20s. So kind of not the best thing, but it does kind of get better, as you can see in the 1990s. There's as a country, we are burdened by past actions that resulted in weakening the identity of Aboriginal peoples, suppressing their languages and culture, and outlawing spiritual practices. So Jean Chrétien did acknowledge this and was quite willing to say, hey, we've messed up. So it does eventually get better, but it took clearly a long time to get there. So after seeing this exhibit, are you guys... Is this something new for you guys? I know it's something I'm not as familiar with. I haven't really been exposed to this sorts of conversations, but certainly seeing all this, it does make me wonder, is Canada and their flag worth respecting? Oh, and another interesting thing is they have a speaker up here, and they're actually kind of blasting quotes from here from prime ministers and members of government over the years, and some of them aren't really great. I think he just said they're sick in reference to Indigenous people, so that's a bit concerning. So still, no matter what, no matter how you feel, it's certainly an interesting dialogue and something I think that's important to have. Let me just see. Is there anything else I can show you? There's basically like a thing here too, kind of describing what they're trying to accomplish with this exhibit, and how if you'd been treated like this all these years, would you want to celebrate this country's birthday? And for a lot of Indigenous people, I'm sure I don't want to speak for them, but I certainly think they might not be as excited to celebrate Canada's birthday with all these things happening. So it's definitely an important conversation to have. And then this kind of final area here, they have a lot of really cool Indigenous pieces of art. And I think it's one of my favorite exhibits I've been to in a really long time. Sorry for the glare there, but kind of showing some of the art there. So what do you guys think? Is this a conversation we need to continue about Indigenous peoples and how they've been treated over the years in Canada, or do you think we should just move on and let the past be the past? I think that we should have these dialogues. That's my opinion, but I'm certainly open to hearing others for sure. As they say, share your thoughts on the act of resistance. So if you guys wanted to send me any questions, by all means right now. But if I don't see anything, I'm just going to wrap it up here. Look at that. So pretty simple. Like it's not a really glamorous sort of, not crazy sort of exhibit, but it's simple and clear enough to kind of get the point across, which I think is just the hallmark of any great museum exhibit. And I really like the museum here because they do interesting things like this. I always describe them as a really hip sort of museum, and they just do some stuff that I tend to not see really much else. They're willing to have those challenging conversations. So it doesn't look like we have any questions or anything. You can always send us a message or something on Twitter or Facebook at KW Tonight. No spaces on Facebook, and then at KW_Tonight on Twitter. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Again, my name's Chris Hussey, and I'm the editor of KW Tonight. Ciao.